author who has written the book. Good Books Online is the show that brings readers and authors together.
Well, welcome to another episode of Good Books Online. And today we have with us author Mark Marinaccio, who has just written The Colony. Now, kind of funny, Mark, when you think about it, because you read a lot about illegal aliens. They make the headlines quite a bit, but these are not your normal type of illegal aliens. I'm going to let you kind of give our readers the backstory.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I didn't intend to write something that was sort of politically and culturally relevant, right, as it is right now. And the story really centers around this colony of aliens that arrives to Earth, and they want to integrate with human society. We find out quickly that they are essentially alien-human hybrids with no knowledge of how they came to be on the ship that brought them to Earth. A lot of them didn't know that as well. And as you can imagine, the story dives right into the struggle and the division that takes place on Earth when a new race of people want to be a part of civilization. There are the groups that are pro-alien, the groups that are anti-alien, the aliens that are anti-human, and the aliens that are pro-human. So a lot of division. It was just totally by happen chance that as I was putting it out there and putting it together, suddenly the illegal immigration and alien thing just really became a hot button topic in politics.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about, a few people. It's not like, the Apollo 11 had 3 dudes on it. I mean, we're talking about a mothership with, a couple 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Hi, we're here, it's like having unwanted guests show up, a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. I mean, not a small amount.
No.
Like you said, a couple 100,000, and enough to have an impact globally, right? I mean, that's a very large number, and so of course it puts a strain on resources. And they can't all go to New York City. So
right.
We get into questions of division and segregation, and like you said, it's a large amount of people, and so
right.
Immediately that saying yes to allowing them to come down means a bit of a strain on resources, and not just food and water, but government resources, public works, and just financial resourers.
Yeah, well, and also think about it. I mean, if we had a couple 100,000 beings from another planet show up and say, "Hey guys, we're here and we're staying," there'd be a lot of other questions that would come to your mind immediately. Like, first of all, what do these people really want? And what the hell are they doing here? I mean, of all the places they could have come to, why are they here?
Well, you can imagine too if someone comes from aliens come from another planet and say, "Hey, we don't know where we came from.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That we were sent here, and we want to live with you because we've learned everything about you, and it seems great." We're all going to say, "Whoa, back up for a second. What do you mean you don't know where you came from? We can't trust you. We can't go." So the book actually jumps forward immediately from the time that we see that their arrival. It jumps forward 4 years.
Okay, but before that, let me back up, because let me go to the first part, because before they actually jump ahead 4 years, what was kind of interesting was the President of the United States says, "Okay, we've got these people that come to us from another planet, and we want you to kind of take them under our wing and tell them what happens at the press conference in New York."
Well, that is actually the 4 year later point. That's when we first allow them to we're going to allow them to come down to Earth. At the press conference, the leader of the aliens announces to the world and to his own race of aliens that they are alien-human hybrids,
right,
with relations to human beings on Earth. And this is something that I've always been fascinated in as a paranormal and ufologist enthusiast, is the idea of the abduction scenarios and alien-human hybrids being out there. So this was sort of my way of exploring that. But suddenly now the people on the ship realize, oh, wow, we're not just, people from another planet coming here and integrating. We've got people on Earth that we're related to. And then, of course, on Earth, people suddenly saying, what does that mean? How am I related to an alien? And we're talking, mothers and fathers out there and siblings and great aunts and uncles. So it opens up a whole can of worms as to the how and the why of it all.
Yeah, well, plus, not to mention opening up the can of worms is quite a lot of violence at the press conference.
Yeah, so right off the bat, we start with domestic, in some forms, terrorism. And
Right.
again, didn't plan on any of this coinciding with what's taking place in the world today, but it happens. But
When you come to
right
New York,
off
you
the
got to
bat-
expect to get mugged, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes. So,
I mean, right away, there are people who just don't trust it, don't
Sure.
trust them, don't want them here,
Right.
and want to try to keep them out. And this, and it's that division, immediate division,
Sure.
that's really the fun of writing that helped me to set the tone and find those characters and that character development because of that division.
Right, and also think about it. I mean, because one of the things that talked about quite a lot, should aliens show up, is think of all the ways in which it would affect our society. Because there's one thing about us talking about, we know there's got to be other intelligent life out there, but when they actually show up, it's going to have implications politically, implications religiously. It's going to open up a whole can of worms.
Sure, and it's funny because I don't get, not yet in the book, in the series, I don't get too deep into that.
Right.
Because when you think about it, the first thing isn't going to be the philosophy of it all or the metaphysics of it all. It's going to be a bit more about the reality and dealing with the situation on the ground.
Sure.
And that's sort of what happens. They arrive, and while there's that struggle and that confusion about what it all means, there's also no time to get too deep into that, because this is a real scenario that has to be dealt with immediately.
Well, how did you deal with it? Because I've only read like the first 15 pages, which is he sent me for the intro material. So how do you actually start getting into the nuts and bolts? Because the last chapter that I read, they're actually being processed by immigration naturalization, and that's all she wrote for me.
Yeah, so a lot of it gets back to how the book was conceived, but a lot of it will start to stem around key characters. And the first one I introduce that we really follow is not the aliens that you read about in the beginning, Mikhail and Ariana, or their leader Ring Bakar, who you meet pretty early on is an immigration customs enforcement agent named Kate Pierce, and she sort of unwittingly becomes a protector of these hybrid alien children. And so it's really through her that we immediately experience all of those things, because she is torn herself because of a lot of different things that you can read about, but she also is charged with protecting children. Now, forget about where they came from or their DNA.
Right.
They are children, and she is charged with protecting them. So she gets put in the middle and gets put in the crosshairs of a lot of rival groups. And it's a bit of a classic story in that there's nothing as black and white anymore when you're in that situation. There are a lot of gray areas, and she has to operate in a lot of those gray areas for a lot of reasons. But we get into it eventually down the road, and the book is part of a series that will come out, where we will get deeper into the spiritual side of it, the religious side of it. There's a lot of, I take my cues from a lot of great books. I was heavily influenced by Childhood's End, which actually recently had a TV miniseries on. And one of the things I loved about that story was, before the aliens revealed themselves, they had to be sure there was no religion anymore. And so the idea of religion disappearing or questioning religion because of extraterrestrial sort of encounters and arrivals was very interesting to me. So I will get into that part eventually.
Okay. Well, what made you decide to write this book in the first place?
Well, I didn't intend to write it as a book or even the book series it's become. I worked in television for the last 17 years, and I always intended this story in some facet as being a television series, a dramatic sci-fi television series. I've always been a big science fiction fan my whole life, especially sci-fi television shows. And I did a lot of work in the paranormal in television, produced and directed a lot of paranormal, and I started putting it together as a television show pilot. And this is the interesting thing, the funny thing we were talking about before about writing, is that I couldn't resolve what the pilot was, because this is a multi-generational, multi-universe world. And it wasn't really until I started exploring the idea of story worlds and transmedia applications of story worlds, I started thinking, this is a world. Let me think now about within that world what makes the most sense. And I was working on one of my shows, and I had a writer's room full of writers. And I would always pop in there with my own kind of personal things and talk about this. And one of the writers just said, write it as short stories. You've got all these little vignettes and stories. Write it as short stories and see what kind of pops out. And so I said, okay, let me do that. And that's immediately when I fell into this character, this agent, Kate Pierce. So I intended it as a TV pilot, but while looking for what was the pilot, because in a pilot you don't say everything. It's very much about a character, central character, and that's the pilot script and what it's about and about the story. And I couldn't figure that out, so I started writing it as, a longer form. Like, let me write some short stories. And as I did that, I just fell more and more in love with what I could do with this being a book series, because I could really, really go much further. And if the TV thing happens, that's great. But right now, it's about writing it as a book series, and it's a lot to do with my science fiction influences growing up, and my career path in paranormal that leads me to explore those bigger questions in the world and the universe.
So like the mothership showed up, so did the novel, right? It kind of just landed.
It landed, and I found myself learning about these aliens and about this mothership as I wrote, and I think we can all sort of relate to the euphoria a writer gets when, as you're writing, the story starts telling itself and revealing itself. And I just can't do that in TV with this story. I mean, it's really for much longer film.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question. Let's talk a little bit about your television background. Have you written science fiction before for TV?
I've been a reality television director, producer, showrunner, creator for 17 years. A lot of my work was in the paranormal, shows like Ghost Hunters and Dead Files, and a slew of other ones. A couple 100 hours of paranormal work, and created a lot of shows in that vein as well. Things about curses, and worked on shows that had to do with conspiracy theories and aliens and Mars and all this other kind of stuff. And I did a lot of other things as well. I did shows like Ultimate Fighter and Sex Sent Me to the ER and TLC and big Fox reality shows. But it was always my interest in the universe, science fiction, science fantasy, science fact. That drove me into the storytelling side of television. The paranormal TV genre was one I went into because of my interest in the quote-unquote paranormal world prior to ever working in television.
That's why I'm kind of surprised that you didn't come up with a paranormal novel.
Oh, I have those. Yeah, I mean, I've got the next book that I will write after I feel like I'm in a good place to take a break from this while catching up the next one is about all of my paranormal experiences doing all of these shows. I was all over the world in all kinds of locations, like castles in Romania and Ireland. And I'm working on a book that's about my experiences in those places, as well as what happened to me and how I grew up that led me to go that route. And when that's over with, I've got a really great character that I actually worked out that is based on a TV show I created that was on the Bio channel called Cursed. It's led by a very real, sort of Indiana Jones doctor. And so when I get to the point of that series, that'll be based on him in a historical fiction sort of way, and that'll be a paranormal series.
Okay, so but this particular novel, it isn't really a novel, it is a series in itself, right?
It's not a novel yet. It's going to be a series of novellas, 100 pages each.
Sounds good. Well, the price is right, because I noticed on Amazon it was only 99 cents.
Yeah, they're very short, so I couldn't if Amazon would charge less, I would.
Hey, there have been some people who made a lot of money and sold a lot of books selling for 99 cents on Amazon. It's actually a good price point.
Yeah, and when they're combined to a larger book, it won't be 99 cents always.
Right, understood.
But right now,
it's all right.
It's a good way to get people interested.
Okay, and we're just about out of time. So I just want to let everybody at home know that you can read The Colony on both our site, Good Books Online. Of course, you can click right on over to Amazon and spend your 99 cents to actually buy the book. You can read a sample chapter on Good Books Online. And also you'll find out a little more about Mark and his background, because there's a bio on there. There's there's a blurb for the book. There's also this interview will be on there, and you'll also be able to read several sample chapters. So check it out, and until next week, keep reading good books, folks. Bye for now.